Yo, what's up, guys? We're back. We're going to do another breakdown and predictions video. This time it's going to be for Bellator 289. And this is a really good card. I mean, we got two title fights on the card. We got Patchy Mix taking on another great fighter to make it to the finals in the tournament against Magomedov. And a lot of great fights. You know, the main event is awesome. So I'm pretty excited for this one. But, man, I mean, I really wish Bellator did a better job promoting these fights, man. I feel like two guys in the main event, you know, Stots and Downey, Sabatello, they did an amazing job of really promoting this fight, trying to get themselves out there as much as they can. But Bellator, they need to do a way better job getting these guys out there, man, putting commercials out there, doing stuff on social media, something, doing press conferences. I mean, I've seen them do a little bit more for this fight in terms of at least getting these guys together on, you know, their own shows, like at their last Bellator show, and doing like that little, you know, trash talking thing. But you know, I feel like they need to do a lot more, and hopefully now that they're going to have that next show on CBS, hopefully they can start to, you know, up the marketing and, you know, start to try to compete with these guys, because they're starting to get, you know, a few fighters that obviously don't really have that stench of being a former UFC guy, and they can market them and brand them as Bellator fighters and, you know, get a little bit bigger and, you know, become a little bit more of a player in the space. Because right now I feel like they're dropping the ball, man. I feel like they have a lot better roster than a lot of people give them credit for. It is because they don't put their fighters out there enough. And they have Scott Coker, who I think is a, you know, a guy that's a good promoter, and he gets a lot of respect, and, you know, I like what he does, but I don't think he does enough in terms of, you know, going out there and talking about the fighters, man, and really trying to, you know, make an effort to really promote these fights. I feel like he could do a lot more. You know, like Dana White back in the day when the UFC wasn't as big, he was out there all the time being so, you know, visible. And I feel like Scott Coker should be doing a lot more of that. But, you know, just besides that, let's just get into the card here. We got Caspel taking on Jared Scoggins as the first fight. And Jared Scoggins, he's coming back to fight. He hasn't fought in over a year. He had two scheduled fights this year get canceled. And recently, in general, he's had a tough time getting to fights. He had to pull out of his last four fights. And Scoggins, the last time he did get in the cage was December 3rd, 2021. It was his Bellator debut, and he got knocked out by Josh Hill. Overall, he is 10-2, and he does have some decent wins. He beat Juan Puerta, he beat Cody Durden, and he has won 5 fights in a row before losing to Hill. So hopefully he could build another win streak and start to get more active after this fight. But he's taking on Caspel, who's a Bellator veteran, and I feel like Caspel is an overachiever. Recently, he's taken a step up in competition and lost 2 in a row, so maybe we've seen a ceiling, but he's really done a good job in his career. He's 35 years old, so it's tough to say that he'll show an extremely improved skill level, but he's also returning from a year and a half away from competition. I'm just not that worried about it because he does coach a high school wrestling team, and I feel like he's going to have high effort. He always fights with effort, and he's going to be in shape. So I'm not really too worried about that, but skill-wise, we got Caspel. He's a big bantamweight. He's 5'10". He's going to have a 67-inch reach, which is going to be a smaller reach than his opponent in this one, so that could be an issue. But obviously, he's going to have that good height advantage. And he's southpaw. He primarily throws kicks. He doesn't really throw hands that often or in combination, but he has good punching power when he does land. He'll throw the overhand lefts, and he'll throw some creative knees, spinning attacks as well. He's a fighter that usually has to take advantage of other opponents making mistakes on the feet, and he'll explode in and land a real big counter and hurt guys. And he's a good wrestler defensively. For MMA offensively, he doesn't really set his takedowns up the best and can struggle to get fights to the ground. His last fight against Jorno Lugo, he kind of got exposed a little bit. He had a guy in Lugo that fought really smart, just stayed at range, chopped Bell's legs, and Bell couldn't really get much of anything off in that fight. And Bell can be taken down off of his kicks. He is hard to hold down. And I think that's another reason why against Lugo, we didn't see Bell be active at all because he was scared of getting taken down. And in this fight, he has to let shots go and be more aggressive, even if it does get him put on his back, because he can't just sit back and lose a decision like that. And he's a fighter, Caspel. When you commit against him, he'll try to land a power counter. So he can make fights kind of boring if his opponents don't go first, because he's kind of just sitting there waiting. But he's a tricky guy. I mean, if you can wrestle him offensively, we did see Stots kind of dominate him and, you know, beat him up on the ground. And we've seen other guys take his back. But overall, you know, cardio-wise, he's going to have good cardio. He's going to be dangerous on the feet. He's going to have good offensive grappling when he can get on top. And he's going to be hard to control when you take him down. And obviously, being a wrestling coach, he's going to be in good shape. So, Scoggins, he's a point fighter. On the feet, he's a karate guy, nice kicks, and then he has solid wrestling. Tends to keep the range, not really take too many risks, throw kicks, and then close the distance, clinch, and try to get the takedown. And he has a good style to win this fight over Cass Bell because he's not going to overextend or give Bell many opportunities to counter. And he's going to be more fluid with his kicks on the outside. I think he'll be able to keep it standing and, be boring, win on minimal strikes if he wants to. And he could also mix it up and land a takedown or two. And he's finished he has 4 finishes, and all of them are KO TKOs. 3 were in his first 3 fights against no names, and since then he's won 6 of his last 7 via decision. So primarily a decisionator, and I think he'll probably take the decision here, Scoggins, in a boring fight. Caspell's a fun fighter to watch against the right dance partner, but Scoggins is akin to Jornel Lugo, and he will not take too many risks. I think he's going to stay on the outside, use his speed, kicks, maybe hit a takedown or two, and I don't see much damage happening here from either fighter, but I feel like Scoggins being a huge favorite, I don't have much interest at all in Scoggins with the money line. I think it's a dog or pass. I think the only bet you could really make is Caspell to win inside the distance or just Caspell's money line, because Scoggins did get slept bad in his last fight. And if he makes that mistake against Bell, which he came in with his hands totally down and punching range, tried to throw a kick and just got countered and put out. And, if he does that, Scoggins could get knocked out. I mean, I think Bell, when he gets at just at plus 700, is probably the best value bet on this fight, but as a pick, I'm going to go with Scoggins just as a pick by decision. And this next fight, I'm excited for this one. We got Patrick Downey. He's taking on Christian Eckles. And Patrick Downey, he's one of the highest level wrestlers that you can get in MMA. And Bellator has, a thing with getting these real good amateur wrestlers and trying to convert them to become MMA stars. And Downey not only was a high school wrestler, he also is a standout athlete in general. He's one of the best QBs in the country for high school football. And he made a lot of mistakes. I feel like, he was invited to go and train at the Olympic Training Center. He was able to work with guys like Jordan Burroughs, arguably the best wrestler of all time. And due to issues in his personal life with the law, he kind of squandered that opportunity. And then he was kicked off Nebraska wrestling as well for personal issues. I think issues getting arrested again. He went the JUCO route. He won a junior college NCAA or junior college NCJAA national championship, went undefeated, and then he got another chance. He went to Iowa State, and he did well at Iowa State. I think he finished 5th at the NCAA championships one year. He was an All-American, and then he got kicked off Iowa State as well, so that kind of effectively ended his collegiate wrestling career. He went on to wrestle at the junior level for USA, and he did really good there. He was able to win the silver medal at the World Championships. He was a FILA and a USAW national champion. And then he went on to, compete for the senior level team, and he did really well there. He kind of did a really good job. I mean, he was able to, I believe, make the team at one point, and he was going to be in the Olympics, but that Olympics got canceled due to COVID. And then he had some issues as well where I think they asked him, they said they didn't really want him on the team anymore. And that was a weird one. It was like about a tweets or something. But then he decided to go to the MMA route and sign with Bellator. I think he was trying to fight with LFA before, but it never ended up happening. Ended up just coming right to Bellator. And he fought in August. He won the fight by submission in 36 seconds. And I mean, he showed he may be a force for anyone to deal with. He kind of squandered a lot of opportunities to be great in his wrestling career, so hopefully MMA can make up for that. And usually, you don't get this high-level guy, that high-level wrestler come to MMA in America. Maybe, and probably not in other countries either. I don't really know as much, but I mean, usually when they're this high level, like a Patrick Downey, where they can be on the Olympic team, they can make money in wrestling, and they don't really have a big incentive to come over to the MMA world. So the fact that Downey had all these issues and kind of fell out of that wrestling kind of world, and maybe Joe's better in the MMA world. I mean, it's a little bit grungier, obviously, so I maybe won't have as many issues, but yeah, it's pretty cool. I think it's like, this guy is a better wrestler than Bo Nickel. He's like one of the best wrestlers in the world. So pretty interesting, and he didn't show anything that people didn't know in his pro debut. I mean, he got into a body lock, hit the takedown, and got a submission in like 36 seconds with the arm triangle. He only threw one punch, And I don't really anticipate that he's going to have, opponents that are going to show us much about him coming up for a while. I mean, this time he's taking on a 2-2 guy from Alabama, training out of a 10th Planet gym, so maybe he does have some submission game, but I think that's a terrible style to have against Patrick Downey. I mean, with Downey, you maybe want to get a guy that can go in there and get a knockout, because Downey is already kind of polished as, I mean, he's not like a black belt level, but he knows what he's doing on the ground in terms of jiu-jitsu as well. And Eckles, it's going to be his Bellator debut. His 2 fights this year, he has finished both of them in, less than 20 seconds, I believe. Or maybe one was a little longer, but the 2 fights this year that he's finished in a combined 55 seconds. His pro debut, he fought predictionguru. He lost that fight, and he ended up losing his second fight as a pro as well. But outside of predictionguru, he hasn't really fought any recognizable names. And he's a brown belt. And on the feet, he will throw overhanded double. He's aggressive, and he'll brawl real sloppy. Seems like recently he's kind of gotten a little bit more polished with the striking, but it doesn't really seem to be that much of a threat. And I don't see how he's going to be able to stop Patrick Downey from taking him down. So to me, I mean, his best chance to win is to go out there and just throw big haymakers early and try to land on that chin, and then throw as many submissions as you can and maybe try to catch the guy. But I just highly doubt he's going to be able to catch a submission off of his back. I also have seen that his chin is a little bit questionable. So if he brawls, I mean, Downey's a big guy too, so he has a chance to knock him out. But I'm going to pick Downey to, get a quick takedown and a submission again, or ground and pound. I think he's a beast, man. I think he could work his striking a little bit here if he wants to, because I don't think that Eckles is a big threat on the feet. But I'm going to say he just goes out there and beats this guy again, tries to finish him as fast as possible. So I'll say he gets a first-round submission in this one. With this guy being a brown belt, I mean, maybe I'll pound him out, but I'm just going to say it's going to be a submission win. And this next fight, Mark Leminger versus Michael Lombardo. I don't really have a big opinion on this fight. I kind of didn't really have a big lean after I watched the tape on these guys. I feel like Mark Leminger, he's a big guy for the weight, decent wrestler, and his striking is all right, but he has a questionable chin, and his defense is really bad. He doesn't move his head, and real susceptible to shots coming up the middle, like uppercuts, knees, and things like that. And his chin is questionable too. So if Leminger gets on top, he's a beast. He has real good ground and pound, pretty good submission game, and he's tough. I mean, he recently has gotten hurt pretty bad and finished with some strikes in some fights, like the Neiman Gracie fight wasn't a good look, but he's willing to take damage, keep coming forward. And he is one of these guys that marks up, though. So, I mean, sometimes, he'll have real bloody face. He's gotten broken orbitals. He had fight stopped because of cuts. So that's another issue that he's had. But he's a, tough, gritty wrestler that'll throw big overhands and be aggressive on the feet and try to get the takedowns. And he's real effective on top. And with Lombardo, he also is a grappler, but I would say he has better striking. His footwork is a little bit better, and he throws heavy shots. The issue with him is he's just not athletic, and when guys throw in combination and kind of exchange with him, sometimes he can get overwhelmed a little bit, and he also struggles against guys with a long reach. But with this fight, he's going to be the fighter with the longer reach. He's a little bit bigger, and I think he's going to do a pretty good job of stopping the takedowns of Leminger. And I just feel like he's going to catch him in that first round. So I'm going to go with Michael Lombardo to knock him out in the first round with the uppercut. But, I mean, I just don't really like this fight. I'm not a big fan of either guy's style. And not really looking at it from a betting perspective, to put a bet on either guy here. So I'm going to go with Lombardo, though, by knockout. In this next fight, we got Kevin Bohm. He's going to be taking on Kai Kamaka. And Kai Kamaka, he's a UFC veteran, solid fighter. He's been up and down since moving up to the big leagues, the UFC and Bellator, but he's had some bad luck on the judges' scorecard, some close fights not go his way. Lost a split decision in his last fight. He did win in his Bellator debut over John Jesus, so 1-1 in Bellator. He had some real close losses in the UFC before getting cut. And this should be a step down in competition for Kamaka. Chance for him to have a showcase performance. If he struggles or loses this fight, his relevance to Bellator and in MMA in the MMA world in general will take a nosedive. And for Kevin Bohm, he's looking, for a very different result in his second Bellator fight. Bohm debuted for Bellator a little over 4 months ago. He got dropped and then submitted in a little over a minute in that fight. He was facing an undefeated Russian, so It was no easy out for him. And Bohm has racked up a 9-4 record before joining Bellator's rosters. He has some decent victories, but no real standout wins. If he beats Kamaka, it definitely will be the biggest victory of his career. And for Kevin on the feet, he really only attacks with left kicks. He fights in the orthodox stance, but he throws a lot of lead leg round kicks. He'll throw some jabs to the body or jabs to the head, and then the kick behind it. But he has no real hands that he really goes to. Stands tall, bad defense, keeps his chin in the air. He got dropped and submitted in his last fight. He's been knocked out already in his career once before. His wrestling is okay. Good defensive wrestling. Good job defending takedowns and working his way on top. Decent top control. And he's probably the best when he's in top position. Most of his finishes came from ground and pound. His last fight, he tried to jump on a single leg after he got rocked and ended up getting reversed and choked unconscious. But when you put him on his back, I have noticed that he can get controlled, but I haven't really seen too much from him there. His cardio is good, and he is a tough guy. And for Kamaka, he's pretty basic. He'll pressure box. He has a good jab, good lead hook, solid body head striking combinations. Footwork is pretty good. He can control distance, move in and out, counter guys. He's fast, athletic. He'll throw high volume of strikes and pretty good wrestling. Grappling isn't the greatest, but he could stuff takedowns, get takedowns. Control on top okay, and good cardio. He has nice pressure, pretty good gas tank, and I don't really see how Kamaka would lose this fight outside of just not showing up. I mean, he's going to have the way better boxing. He's going to be pressuring, which is going to take away a lot of the kicking game of Bohm, and I think that he could stuff the takedowns pretty easily. I think he should be able to beat him up with the boxing and maybe even get a takedown or two. I don't really think he'll get the finish just because he doesn't have great finishing instincts. He tends to just pot shot guys. But I feel like Kamaka is a pretty safe pick to get the win and a parlayable guy on this card. And this next one, this is a cool matchup here. Chris Lencioni is making his return to Bellator. He was one of the more recognizable mid-carders for Bellator when he left the promotion. He has a good personality and he got some upset victories. He had a beef with AJ Agazarm, who's a part of that Nick Diaz army, and ended up beating him, which was a pretty hyped fight. And that was his last fight on his contract for Bellator. And I don't know if he, felt like he deserved more money or what ended up happening. I think maybe he wanted to try to go to the UFC because he went to the FAC promotion and he fought on a Looking for a Fight show. And I think he lost on that fight to Don Shanis. I think that was the fight he lost. And then he ended up fighting 2 more fights on Fight Pass. And he beat Draco Rodriguez, who is a UFC veteran. And his last fight was 4 months ago. He beat a 9-10 journeyman, but now he's back with Bellator and getting a pretty big fight for his return. He's facing off with a ranked fighter, facing off with a high-level prospect for Bellator and Cody Law. Cody Law, he was 6-0 under the Bellator banner, but took his first misstep in his last fight. He had fought 6 lower-level opponents, even though he was leveling up every fight. His last fight, he took a step up in competition. He fought a regional scene champion, and he lost that fight via decision. And he has some pressure to perform in this fight, avoid 2 losses in a row. You saw him at the weigh-in today, refuse the handshake. It seems like he's all business. And this fight is a classic battle of wrestling versus jiu-jitsu, but I think Law has the striking advantage too. And Cody Law is a former Penn State wrestler, Division II national champion. Chris Lencioni is a jiu-jitsu brown belt who's an active guy on the grappling scene. Even though Cody Law lost his last fight, I was still pretty impressed. He was facing a high-level black belt in jiu-jitsu, so he decided to try and strike to win. And he was good on the feet. I mean, he was switching stances, landing nice pull counters, had good speed, good footwork. He is improving with his kicks. And he was able to win the first round and first half of the second round with his speed, footwork, and striking. He started to get a little tired, and that allowed his opponent to back him up more, land some strikes with the fear of the counter. And he was able to steal the second round, Gonzalez, and then he ended up winning the third round by getting on top. Cody Law's wrestling is absolutely elite, though. Law has super fast level changes. He has good positional grappling on top, good ground and pound. But Chris Lencioni is a dangerous grappler, and Lencioni has had fights where opponents have been able to take advantage of his confidence in the grappling, though, and hold him down, use their heavy top pressure to win decisions. Law in his last fight, he was unwilling to be in the full guard of James Gonzalez, but Gonzalez is, in my opinion, way more dangerous off of his back than Lencioni. And I wouldn't be surprised or shocked to see Law lean on the wrestling, especially in the second and third rounds in this fight. I think Law will have the cardio more on point, and that last fight will be good experience for him. It was the first time he went to decision. It was his first really tough fight, and he showed a lot of toughness. He was taken down in round 3, had to survive a really deep rear naked choke. And training to ATT, I expect Law to be ready. I expect him to, be prepared and in cardio shape for this fight. For Chris Lencioni, primarily a grappler, striking isn't the greatest, stands very tall, isn't the fastest fighter. He has pretty good kicks. He has okay counter jabs, okay right hands, but I think Law will have the advantage in the striking, especially when they're both fresh. But Lencioni is a grinder. If he gets Law tired with this pressure, there is a potential to work the kicks and steal a win. Lencioni has decent level changes. His takedowns against the fence are all right. But I would be shocked to see him be able to take down Cody Law. Lencioni, if he gets on top, is really good, especially if he can take the back. But off of his back, besides the triangle, he doesn't really have a lot of danger factor. His cardio is good, and that's probably his biggest advantage along with his experience in this fight. He needs to try to pressure, use his durability to eat shots, get Law tired, even try to wrestle, even if it's ineffective, just to get that third to tax the gas tank. And I like Chris Lencioni. I do think he is a guy that obviously has gotten a lot of upset victories in the past, but I think he's outgunned in the striking and wrestling here. Cody Law is going to have the speed advantage and the technical advantage on the feet. He's going to have the power edge. I think he's going to be able to stick and move, land big shots, and I wouldn't say a KO is out of the question. And Law should also be able to stuff the takedowns and even potentially get a takedown or two to steal the rounds. And with this matchup, the submission threat is there for Lencioni, even though I don't see it being very likely. Lencioni also has the cardio edge, but I don't see it being profound enough to get him the victory. And I have to go with Cody Law to bounce back in this fight and get the win. Even though I'm a fan of Lencioni and think he's a good fighter, I just think Law can't afford to lose 2 in a row. He's too athletic, fast. His striking is pretty good for a wrestler's experience level is not the greatest at this point, but I think it's enough to beat Lencioni. And I actually think he's going to have a good showing here. And I'm going to say that Cody Law wins this fight going away by decision. And I feel like he's another guy that's a parlayable fighter on this card. And this next fight, we got Kyle Crutchmer. Kyle Crutchmer is a specialist. He's a former NCAA D1 All-American, Big 12 champion wrestler. And in the cage, he goes in there to maul people. And he's had a majority of his fights in Bellator. He signed with Bellator after going 4-0 in Oklahoma. He's gotten 5-1 in 6 Bellator fights, and currently he's won 3 in a row. Trains with AKA, so they got wrestlers, and they get wrestlers ready to fight better than almost any camp. And at 29 years old, he definitely has potential. On the feet, Crutchmer has good movement, speed. He will use side-to-side movement to try to pull fighters into his rear cross overhands and eventual level changes. And he's improving his jab, his hand speed overall. He throws decent kicks. When he gets pressured or hit, he will turn into wrestling mode and shoot or clinch. So that is something that fighters could potentially take advantage of. And Crutchmer's wrestling is top-notch. Good job moving around and then timing the shot. And he has nice takedowns against the cage when he can back you up. On top, he likes to just control. He doesn't really have a great grappling yet. And his one loss, he was forced to strike against a jiu-jitsu guy and didn't really want to fight on the mat. And he isn't a sitting duck on the feet, but he just still isn't the greatest striker. His cardio is good, but he hasn't really been able to show it off in a tough fight or really high-paced fight yet. And his chin has also not really been tested much yet, but I feel like he'll be durable. He hasn't taken very much damage at all in his career. For Jalil Willis, he's a fighter looking to get back on track. He was on a 6-fight winning streak and 2-0 in Bellator, but he lost to Muhammad Berkmanov in October 21 and then suffered another loss at Bellator 273. Both losses he was submitted, so hopefully he's still confident and ready to go here. He is a former LFA champion. He's beaten some pretty decent fighters. If he shows up and performs, he is a tough out. And he's well-rounded. He's explosive, athletic, good kicks. He's dangerous in punching exchanges, good hand speed. And his defense is not really the greatest. He has decent distance control, but he's hittable. His chin is a little bit questionable. I do feel like he might have a slight advantage in the striking in this fight, but it's going to be competitive, especially with the threat of the takedown. And Willis is a judo black belt. He has okay grappling. He'll mix in takedowns when he has to, but obviously I see him trying to keep this fight standing. His takedown defense is hard to gauge. I haven't really seen too many people shoot in on him, but he doesn't look great off his back when he gets put there. He's been submitted quick in his last 2 fights, tend to give his back or gives dominant positions when he gets put on bottom. And he has been, dropped as well. He got dropped real early against Berkmanov and gave his back, got submitted. And his last fight, he got hurt on the feet, slammed, and then guillotined. So his chin has kind of not really been the best to him in recent fights. Cardio-wise, he does have 5-round experience and comes in pretty solid shape. And ultimately, I think the line is a little wide. I'm going to go with Crutchman to win this fight via decision. I think he could stick and move, use that improved footwork, hands, and get it to the ground and, get some takedowns and win the decision that way. And obviously, Willis's chin is a little bit questionable. So he could even get a knockout, even though I think that's pretty unlikely. But this is a fight I would pass on. I don't really like the line. But personally, I'm going to pick Crutchman by decision. In this next fight, we got a female fight at 125 pounds between Denise Keelhos and Ilara Giovanni, two of the higher ranked girls in the weight class. And Ilara Giovanni, she's an impressive fighter. She's strong, athletic, good in all areas. On the feet, she has good distance control, footwork, feints, fakes, fast hands, good boxing. She'll throw in combination. She has good counter punching. She has nice kicks. She'll throw kicks to all parts of the body. And her kicks are what do tend to get her in trouble. The most on the feet, she has to be very aware to not throw her kicks blind in this fight and get countered because she is facing a power puncher. If she could stir up her defense just a little bit, she can be a very effective striker. We did see in her last fight that when Alexander Lara was able to back her up, she, did clip her with some heavy punches and, had Giovanni in a little bit of trouble. But Ilara Giovanni, she's a strong wrestler and grappler. She's good in the clinch. She has good offensive wrestling. And on top, she has good control, solid submissions, real slick back takes. She's good in transitions. Her biggest issue right now is her takedown defense, getting stuck on bottom. She does have an okay guard. She'll stay active, attack subs. She has pretty good sweeps. But in her last two losses, she got controlled and held down against heavy top pressure fighters. She is 28 years old. She's getting better in every fight. She trains with the Pitbull brothers and definitely has an edge about her. I feel like she's one of the better female prospects that Bellator has. She has well-rounded skills, athleticism, durability, cardio, good fight IQ. The game plan for Giovanni should be to wrestle in this fight, get it to the ground, and try to find that submission. Her opponent, Denise Keelhos, is an excellent athlete. She's a top contender in Bellator, and she also is a former Bellator kickboxing champion. She uses her hands more than her legs. She likes to stay on the outside of kicking range, though, because she is excellent at countering fighters when they close the gap. Good in and out movement to land and get out herself. And she loves that left hook. She looks for it as a counter more than any other punch. And she also is aggressive at times with her blitzes. She'll blitz in and throw real explosive combinations. She likes to throw 3-2s, 2-3s. And she's a pretty good jab. She has decent 1-2s. Her power and hand speed are good. And she has good timing as well. Her distance control is kind of what wins her fights. She's able to frustrate girls and then catch them. And she needs to stay disciplined in this fight, not give up the easy takedowns. And she has solid grappling. She is a former judo artist. She's pretty good in the clinch, good takedowns from there. Head and arm throws, which aren't the best technique. And I feel like in this fight, if she uses the head and arm throws, then she will get her back taken. But I've seen her, hit some slams. She did get guillotined by Veda Ortega after she shot a double leg. And in this fight, she definitely needs to control the distance and just look to strike. When Keelhos does get the fight to the ground, she is aggressive with her submission game, but her defensive wrestling is not really the greatest, and she's not great off of her back. She tends to slow down as fights go on, and she tends to be easier to get taken down in the second and third rounds. She, early on, is fairly good at getting back up to her feet, but when she starts to slow down, she makes mistakes, and we did see Kana Watanabe take advantage of that, submit her in the second round of her last fight. You do have to be a little bit careful of the armbar against Keelhos from bottom. And she is tough, hard to finish overall. But I think if she gives the back to Giovanni, it's going to be curtains for her, and Giovanni's going to take that neck. Cardio-wise, Keelhos does have 5-round experience, but she tends to slow down. And I think Giovanni's going to use her wrestling and grappling to find the submission in the second or third round here. And I think she's a decent play as an underdog here. And I think her winning by submission also is at a good price to bet on, too. In this next fight, we got an interesting one between Dalton Rosta and Anthony Adams. Rosta is a huge favorite here. And he's one of the best prospects in Bellator. He's a good amateur wrestler, punches super hard. He has a promoted in jiu-jitsu. He's athletic, explosive, slick. Cool aura about him as well. And he's 7-0 in Bellator. He's progressively been taking out better and better fighters. And his striking is decent. He used to be a bit more rigid, but his fluidity is getting better. Good fakes, feints, good jab, 1-2s. He'll rip the body. Pretty good slip and rip ability. His boxing is decent. And his kicks are still not the greatest to me, but he will use them. He'll throw body kicks, head kicks, mostly with the lead leg. And Rossa needs to respect Adams' power here, but it isn't as if Adams has big knockout power, so I think he could strike and win the strike against Adams. He hits harder. He's a little bit more explosive, a little more active. He has better boxing. And Rosta is a great wrestler. He likes to strike, but he has good double legs. He sets him up well. Nice clinch takedowns. Good top control. He transitions well on top. Good ground and pound. He finishes a lot of fights from the top position. And his cardio is really good as well. I think in this fight he should, use the grappling. And if he does that, he could win easily. For Anthony Adams, he came back after a 2-year layoff in his last fight. He got a big upset victory over Khalid Mirzaliev. That win got him in the top 10 of the rankings for Bellator. And now he's getting a huge fight against an undefeated blue chip prospect. So if he wins this fight, I would say he's close to a Bellator title shot. And he trains an elevation fight team, so he's a good gym behind him. And on the feet, he's a slick striker. He has good movement. He doesn't really do a good job of, he doesn't have great movement. I'm sorry. He doesn't really do a good job. He'll stand right in front of guys, but he's trying to almost bait them in so he can land 1-2s or counter jabs, crosses, and he has all right kicks. He has some tricky spinning attacks, elbows. So kind of just tries to capitalize on over-aggressive fighters and, work his counterattacks. And he can be low volume, and he could also struggle a little bit against guys that can close the distance quickly. We saw Impa Kasanganay attack him several times, hurt him. His wrestling is average. He will mix in takedowns, but he hasn't been too effective with his wrestling, and his defensive wrestling seems okay, but not enough to stand up to a wrestler like Dalton Rosta, I don't believe. His confidence has to be boosted from beating a Russian as a huge underdog, but he's 34 years old, so I don't see him looking much different than his usual style. He does have good cardio, but I feel like Rossa has the superior cardio, and I think Rossa will win this fight easily. It's just going to be whether he wins by finish or decision. And Adams has never been finished, and Rosta isn't like a crazy finisher. So I'm going to say it's a decision win for Dalton Rosta. And I think he's a parlayable guy. But his line is a little bit wide, I would say. But I do think he is probably going to get the victory. And this next fight between Magomedov and Patchy Mix is going to be the first fight of the night that decides who's going to be in the finals of the $1 Million tournament. And both these guys have had to beat some pretty solid opponents to get here. Patchy Mix, he's coming off a win over Kyoji Horiguchi, who's a former Bellator champ, former Risen champ, fought for the UFC belt. And Magomedov is coming off of a win against Enrique Barzola, who's a real tough out. So both these guys are primed. They're ready to go. And for Magomedov, he's an okay striker. He has good speed. He controls the distance fairly well. Good job moving around, throwing low kicks, 3-2s, 2-3s. And he has a good check left hook. His overhand and straight right are also accurate, and he should have the speed edge, but I do think he's going to struggle a little bit with the length and the pressure that Mix brings. And overall, he should be the sharper striker if he could use his footwork to stick and move. And he's trying to sit down on some shots and try to get the knockout. He also is pretty notorious for having good spinning attacks, which is something that I don't know if he's going to be as willing to use in this fight because of the back takes that Mix likes to do. But, those are dangerous. And I feel like he needs to attack the body, attack the legs in this fight, try to slow Mix down, get into the championship rounds, and take over then. And he's a high-level grappler. He mainly likes to use the single leg, but Magomedov does do a good job of hiding it behind the punches and the kicks. And usually he can dominate with his wrestling. When he gets on top, he has great awareness positionally, and he has real dangerous chokes. And his control on top is really good overall. He has a great gas tank, so he keeps the pressure for 5 rounds. And he did lose the wrestling and grappling battle against Hoffy and Stots. He was able to get one takedown, but he had the majority of his takedown stuff. He also got reversed. He had his back taken. Stots got very close to catching Magomedov in a rear naked choke in the 3rd round. And if Patchy Mix gets that same position, I think he could take out Magomedov. And I think Magomedov should try to keep it standing in this fight and outstrike Mix. I don't see Magomedov getting better at the wrestling and striking against an extremely high-level wrestler who's longer and bigger, stronger, more athletic. And Enrique Barzola in his last fight was able to get several takedowns, and he was likely ahead on the judges' scorecards. He got the back of Magomedov multiple times before Magomedov found the guillotine in the 4th round. And if Barzola can get to the back and things like that, I have a hard time thinking he's going to out-grapple a fighter like Patchy Mix, even though that's kind of really hard to say. Someone like Magomedov is an amazing grappler in his own right, but Patchy Mix is just a different breed. And cardio-wise, Magomedov probably has a slight edge. He has gone 5 rounds and hasn't really slowed down at all, whereas Mix has slowed down in one of his 5 rounds fights. But Patchy Mix on the feet, he's not very good, but trying to take down his length, help him out. He stands very upright. He throws front kicks to the body, lead hooks, rear crosses. Doesn't really throw shots in combination, and definitely is a little stiff. And we did see Juan Archuleta utilize a lot of lateral movements to dart in, dart out with strikes, and beat Patchy Mix in a 5-round fight. But Mix did win the first 2 rounds, then got a little bit tired, slowed down, and Archuleta was able to use his speed and win. He was landing a lot of body punches and the bigger shots, but he's a very explosive guy, Archuleta, and I don't see Magomedov being that explosive. And what Mix did show in that fight with Archuleta was the heart of a champion. He never folded, even after absorbing huge body shots, he continued to pressure and try to win. And Mix is an elite fighter, and basically Bellator's version of Aljamain Sterling. His grappling is tremendous. He's a great back taker, super tall, long, and lanky, and he really has a good ability to find that body lock. He's always looking to grab a hold of fighters, and when they overextend or throw punches, he'll try to grab them. And that does get him hit sometimes. His striking does need to improve. But when he can get that body lock, he does more often than not get the takedown. He's a menace, man. Drag fighters to the ground from there. He chain wrestles really effectively. He's one of the best back takers in the sport, and you'll get that figure 4, and his control is just incredible. He'll attack with a plethora of submissions from there, rear naked chokes, leg locks, guillotines. And even if Mix can't get the submission, he wins that round when he gets to the back position. And he's a great scrambler as well. Being on the ground with Mix is not where you want to be. You shoot in on him, he'll immediately attack guillotine. He'll work the butterfly hooks from his guard. He'll be trying to sweep right away. And more often than not, even against high-level grapplers, he's able to reverse, get on top. This fight with Magomedov is going to be a big treat on the ground. And my, question about Mix is just the cardio. If he starts to get tired, and, then Magomedov could take over. But I think his cardio is definitely not a big issue. I mean, he was able to go 5 rounds and look good in his last fight, even though he had a lot of control time. It's just his fight with Archuleta, he did get tired, but he was getting really hammered to the body, and it's not like he totally gassed out. He was still there. It's just he slowed down a little bit. And this one, I think he's going to look good, though. I'm going to go with Patchy Mix here. It's 2 grapplers, but I think Mix is the bigger, stronger, more athletic, and dangerous grappler. He needs to be aware of the guillotines of Magomedov, but I think he can hit takedowns. And when he gets on top, he can get the back and finish or stay there. And Magomedov isn't that guy that has one-shot power to just stop Mix in his tracks on the counter. And I think the takedown and back take threat is going to make Magomedov think twice of throwing his signature spinning attacks. And I'm going to say Mix gets the job done here. I'm going to say he's actually able to get the submission here and be the first fighter to finish Magomedov. And I'm going to say that he'll get a submission in the second round with a rear naked choke. So I'm going to go with Patchy Mix here. And this next fight, we got the Bellator women's title on the line at 125 with Liz Carmouche and Juliana Velasquez. And Liz Carmouche, she finally broke through. She claimed gold in her last fight after over 12 years as a professional MMA fighter. And the win was not without controversy, though, as Carmouche was down on the scorecards before getting a questionable finish with 13 seconds left in the 4th round. Carmouche got into a dominant position where she landed elbows, but they were not heavy at all or affecting Velasquez, and the finish was definitely a bit strange, kind of anticlimactic, and that's why Bellator has made an immediate rematch. Juliana Velasquez, even though she lost, must be confident in how that fight went and be ready to win her belt back. And that was also her first loss of her career, so she wants to get the win. And she campaigned hard for this rematch, which didn't sit well with Liz Carmouche, so there's some back and forth in this fight. There's some heat on it now, and hopefully it can be a little bit more fun than the first fight, and we can get a more definitive winner. But Liz Carmouche, even though she won the first fight, is really going to have to be way more aggressive in her attempt to get the fight to the ground here. When she got the fight to the ground in the first fight in round 4, she was able to finish the fight shortly after. And I think a lot of that was also due to Velasquez kind of being nonchalant in a bad position, which I don't think she's going to make that mistake again. On the feet in the first fight, Carmouche got outclassed. She barely landed anything. She got dropped. She couldn't really find a way to get past the length and straight punches of Velasquez, and Velasquez was using good evasive footwork to pull Carmouche into power shots and keep the, distance for the majority of the fight, stay clean. And she also had an advantage in the clinch, Velasquez, which was something that I was not really anticipating from the first fight. I thought that Carmouche would have the strength advantage, but Velasquez, with her judo background, was able to do really well in the clinch, even though she did end up getting taken down in the clinch in the 4th round. But I don't think that Carmouche was active enough with her takedowns in the first fight. And if she does try to fight way more aggressive with her wrestling, it could get her knocked out, but it also could change the fight and make it more competitive. Because even though Carmouche won the first fight, the first 4 rounds were really not that competitive. And if she is more aggressive trying to get the takedowns, then I think it could be a different fight. But I think that Velasquez, having seen Carmouche once and how she wants to get inside, how strong she feels, how she sets up her takedowns, I think it's going to make it a little easier. And I'm going to say Velasquez gets her title back, wins the decision. I think there's a reason why Velasquez was campaigning really hard to get the fight, and this Carmouche was campaigning really hard to fight Kana Watanabe, who she had already knocked out really quickly, because I think that Carmouche knows this is a tough fight. But ultimately, it's a pass for me, just because I would want Velasquez to be on like minus 150 in order to bet her personally. I feel like Carmouche has passed a victory, and obviously we saw if she can get on top, she has a big edge there. So to me, I don't think she warrants being a minus 175 favorite, but I do think she's going to get the win. I'm going to say she wins by decision in this one and reclaims the throne in Bellator. And we got the main event here, and even though we got a UFC pay-per-view this weekend, even though Bellator, I feel like, does a horrible job of promoting their fights, it's one of the most talked about fights of the weekend here with Stots and Downey Sabatello. Both these guys need to take a bow. They've done a great job of promoting this fight, talking shit back and forth, and really selling it. And Downey Sabatello, he's really good at doing that, Sabatello. You know, he's a guy that really goes out there and pushes himself, talks a lot of shit, and he can be a little bit cringy at times, but you know, he gets his point out there, and he's, in my opinion, you know, a fun fighter to watch because he backs it up in the cage. And it's not like he's a fun style, but he, you know, makes the fights fun outside the cage, and then you want to see if he can, you know, go in there and finish the job on fight night, so it makes it a little more interesting. And for Stots, he's also a guy that likes to mix it up outside the cage and talk shit. He had, you know, some sparring with Juan Archuleta before the fight where they were talking back and forth, and he really is a guy that, you know, is willing to get in that trash talk and, you know, really mix up his opponent before the fight, and he's pretty funny and good at it. So both these guys have, you know, talked up the fight, and it's been entertaining, but all the trash talk is over, and we're going to see who walks away with that Bellator title tomorrow night and who's going to be the guy that's going to be in the finals of the $1 million tournament. So I've been excited for this fight for months, so let's get into it. I mean, style-wise, it's pretty easy to break down Downey Sabatello. He's going to go into the cage, look to close the distance immediately, throw some big hooks, shoot the takedown. He has super fast shots. If you stuff a shot, he'll reshoot immediately and just try to drown you with the amount of takedowns that he shoots. He has amazing cardio. He's never going to slow down. He's really good at finishing takedowns different ways. He'll circle to the back, control from that wrestling right position really effectively. And when he gets on top, his positional grappling is elite. He will just control that position, drain the clock, drain his opponent, and get ahead on that scorecard, throw enough ground and pound to not get stood up. But up to now, he's not really been overly dangerous in terms of being a finisher. No real submission threat. And he does have elite cardio, but we did see him kind of get a little bit tired in his fight with Irwin Rivera because he shot so many takedowns. I mean, the guy was out there shooting 1 million takedowns, and he got a lot of takedowns stuffed. He was forced to strike and had his body beat up, and eventually got hurt to the body and finished. So I think he's a little susceptible to the body. And his striking, I mean, he's a big fighter with a long frame. It helps him get inside, but he is very vulnerable in the striking. He doesn't really possess much at all. Clearly uncomfortable in exchanges. He doesn't really like to be hit too much, in my opinion, and he has shown a susceptibility to being hurt to the body. If he wins a fight, it's going to be because he uses his wrestling from Purdue, you know, uses his Big Ten championship, and is able to get you down and drown you, and he's a big guy for the weight. And with Stots, he's also a former wrestler, a really good wrestler. He's a 2-time NCAA Division II national champion, and he's the more dynamic, athletic fighter. He's a southpaw. He's explosive. He has good footwork, feints. He likes to bounce in out of range well. Good job controlling distance with the pull twos and his kicks. His body kicks are effective, and while he has to set them up to not get taken down in this fight or push against the cage, they could pay dividends because Irwin Rivera did hurt Downey Sabatello to the body with the body kick and then finish him with the body punch. And the body kicks could also open up another head kick, which is what we saw Stots finish Juan Archuleta with in his last fight. If this fight stays standing, Stots can have the speed advantage. He's going to be more fluid. He's going to be more powerful, more explosive, have the wider arsenal of attacks. And I think he could finish Sabatello late, especially if he stuffs a lot of takedowns, stays on the body, and gets Sabatello tired. And Rafael Stots in his last fight did get taken down. He struggled a little bit with the wrestling of Juan Archuleta. Archuleta and Sabatello were spending time wrestling and working out with each other. So that's a little interesting. I mean, obviously, you know, if Archuleta gave him a little bit of issues, maybe Sabatello will early as well. But Stots was able to stuff the majority of the takedowns. He did get taken down a couple times, but he worked back up to his feet, and eventually he found the knockout. And he got a couple takedowns of his own. I wouldn't be too shocked to see Stots controlled against the cage or taken down for brief periods or even a round or two in this fight. But I'd be very surprised to see him just get blanketed for 5 rounds. He's a great athlete, phenomenal wrestler, scrambler, super hard to control. And if he can make it hard for Sabatello to hold him down and get back to space, and he should have success. He could even get a takedown or two himself, especially if he does that later in the fight when Sabatello is a little bit more tired and desperate. It could break him. And I think cardio-wise, Stots is more proven. For Stots to lose here, he's going to have to fight emotional, I believe. I think Sabatello has tried really hard and done a great job of trying to make this fight personal. But Stots is a veteran. He's older at this point. He knows how to trash talk himself and stay composed. And I don't think he's going to get out of his game because of the talk. And I see him retaining his belt. I like Sabatello, but he's too one-dimensional for me. And if Stots gets stuffed the takedown and start to turn it up on him, we've seen Sabatello break before. And I'm going to say Stots gets the finish in the championship rounds 4 or 5. I can see Sabatello starting well with his size and aggressiveness and wanting to grapple, but once he starts to slow down a little bit, Stots can put that pressure on and go to work, and I think Stots will throw a lot of body kicks that will eventually hurt Downey and either come with the head kick or just take him out slowly with an accumulation of shots. I can see him get in the back and getting a choke, and I'm going to actually, say that Stots gets a finish in round 4. Another reason why I like that he could get a late finish is he does have 4 third-round finishes, Stots, so he does have a history of kind of slow cooking guys and then taking them out late. So personally, I think betting on Stots to win in rounds 3, 4, and 5 is, pretty smart. I think those bets could potentially cash, and they're at high numbers. And if Sabatello wins, I think it's definitely going to be via decision. I don't see him getting a finish. And I think it's going to be very hard for Sabatello, though, to just go in there with the wrestling game plan and control him on the ground. I don't see it happening. So I got to go with Rafael Stots. He's already beating guys like Magomedov. He's beaten guys like in his last fight like Juan Archuleta, who I believe are higher level fighters than Sabatello. So I'm going to go with Stots to get the job done here and retain the belt, move on to the championship. So there you have it, guys. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in the bets I have for this fight card, I do have 7 bets available right now on Bellator. So if you know where to get those, patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru is where you got to go. And besides that, for my most confident pick on this card, it's going to be Patrick Downey. And for the parlay of the week, I'm going to go with Patrick Downey, Cody Law, and Rosta. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to be back next week with some more breakdown and prediction videos. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel if you like this content. And besides that, hit the like button, put some comments down below, and peace, guys. I'm out.